Raul Rosas Jr. Is he being rushed? What do you guys think? There's only guesses that you could give. Everything's clear in hindsight, but especially somebody's career. Like, there are so many things that have to come together, and they have to come together at the right time. Like, you'll have coaches tell you have to be tough, and you have to be of desire, and you have to be disciplined, and you have to be motivated and sacrifice. You'll hear all of these buzzwords, but you could do all of those things and not have the kind of career that you want. Particularly if, and this is extremely common with most human beings, not just athletes, you do have all of those things. You do have motivation. You do sacrifice. You do have discipline. You do have desire. You do have heart. You have all of those things at all different times. And some of those things are the mental side of it. Then you got the physical side. Like, you guys all grew up with somebody that was a child sensation, right? Any sport, whatever you play, wouldn't matter if it was PE and recess. It wouldn't matter if you were out there on the field or the courts. That guy, whatever the rules, whatever the sport, is going to be the best. He just was. And then when you grew up and you look back a little bit and you started to learn about maturing and puberty, and you could see that he was going through that before everybody else. Had a natural strength, just by example. There's a number of things that could happen where you have some of those prodigies, but just by example, and then by the time he gets to high school and everybody else has done it, he's now died off. He went from the star, he's JV in the local lineup. By the time the college recruits come in, there's nothing left. They don't even talk to him. Like, you know guys like this, and you also know guys that were the JV guy in high school. They get to college and you're reading about him. Oh my God, he was doing that? I can't believe it. And the primary reason for that is you have all of those parts that you need: the motivation, the desire, the work ethic, the sacrifice. But it doesn't come along at the same time that your body is developed in any position. So you had all the desire and all the other things, your body's weak, by example. So you go out there and you don't get the results that you want. Then over time, your body starts to grow, but now you're losing motivation, right? And that is definitely something that peaks and then valleys. Motivation is a very terrible thing for anyone to ever believe that they need. But I trust that your teachers, your parents, and your coaches have all told you you need it. The only reason I say you can't control it, motivation is for the weak. Motivation, you're very lucky if you have it. But consider it that. Consider it, know it, recognize it, use it while it's there, and know it's not going to last. Discipline can be there at all times. So I bring you that backstory because when I look at Roas, he is saying all of the right things, but historically speaking, there's not very many guys that have walked in his path that got the desired results. I could, top of my head, Aaron Pico. And Aaron Pico, who is awesome, but Aaron Pico did an interview and he gave Rosas some advice and just said, hey, slow down, take your time. And he was talking about himself. You know, I came in, I had a ton of hype. They threw me wide in. I wanted to be world champion right away, whatever it takes. Give me anybody. And then I found out the hard way that this is a sport. Just because I had success over here, it's not the 90s anymore. This is a different sport. It's very good advice by Aaron Pico. But I could also look at another child prodigy in Sage Northcutt, just by example. And Sage had some experiences, and they led to injuries, and he took some time off his career. And Roas is just in an interesting spot. He's saying all of the right things. And he's having somebody else do all the right things for him, right? Like Roas is saying, I'm going to be champion at 35, 45, and 55. But then he has somebody else that makes sure to match him up with guys who aren't overly experienced or top ranked or very good, frankly. That's helpful. And when I do listen to Roas, I can just remember feeling like that at times in my life. I remember feeling all that energy and that motivation of wanting to train and do everything right and sacrifice. You're absolutely disciplined. But I know young athletes at that age that did that. And that stuff all goes away. By the time your body matures, by the time you're finally in your prime, you've already fired all of those bullets. Those bullets that he has today and thinks, I'm going to have them forever. I'm different. I'm different than everybody that's ever lived before me. I'm going to feel this same way 20 years from now, right? It's one of these things that can be very tough to match that desire and that work ethic and that willingness at the right time when your body has the ability to go out there and overpower another trained athlete. It's an interesting spot. I hope that it goes well. I'm just sharing for you that the advice that Pico gave about slow down. I don't know that Rojas needs to slow anything as long as he keeps having somebody looking after him that's giving him matches that are favorable, that say, hey, you were a 17-year-old kid, boy, child, for that matter, that had to get special permission to come in because you're now 18. Deep breath. You're 1-1 in your last two. Love the idea of being a 3-division champion, but you're 1-1 in your last two. Slow it down just a little bit. And that's some of the advice that's being given. And it's a real slippery slope what you choose to believe, right? To save a little, to have something in the tank, to have a couple left in the chamber, for when the time is right, when physically you match up with the mental drive and desire you have right now. That is a perfect recipe, and those guys often go on to be champions. But it's a very tough thing. If you ever buy into, even slightly, work smarter, not harder, it's over. You have never heard those words out of an athlete's mouth where you can't then go track their trends and it is nothing but downhill. You'll hear people tell you everything in moderation. You won't hear a winner tell you that. Nothing in moderation. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. And anybody that waits generally doesn't get what they want, right? I just don't know other words. Like the message being, hey, wait, be patient. That isn't really what you want the guy to hear. You just don't know other words. Nothing good's to anybody that waits and is patient. But at the same time, there are things that have to come together. There's a physicality that has to match up with your desire and your methods. There's a body that you're using for tools, which is what you're going to choose to monetize. It's the sole commodity you have to monetize. That doesn't get better with time. It wears down with time. So it's an interesting game. It's a tough game, and it's an experiment the whole time. Nobody knows. But I have seen, and I lived at the Olympic Training Center, so I have athletes from all fields that were very good in their youth. So they foregoed, whether it was military service, whether it was college opportunities, whether it was to join the labor force and the apprenticeship. They missed those opportunities of 18 to 24 when most people did it. They become 30. Now they're washed out of the sport, not on their own terms. They weren't done with the sport. The sport is now done with them. They get into the open market. They don't have a resume. They don't even have a single skill. And it ends up being one of these really tough spots where what do you focus on and when do you focus on it? And there is things called a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There is no guarantee that his opportunity in this lifetime is going to come when he's 25 years old. It came now. It came when he was 17. He seized the moment. There's no part of this where I'm giving him a hard time. I celebrate him and what he did, but I am observing it. There hasn't been a 17-year-old signed before. I can say he's 1-1 in his last two. Okay, great. Well, there's nobody that's 1-1 in their last two at 18 years old in the UFC because there's nobody that got one or number two, right? Like these are first times. Everything is going very well. But to preserve your body and try to make sure that when your body finally does have that physicality and can match up, that you still have a little bit of motivation left. And that's a very tough game to play.